If you are holding 5,000 XRP right now, and Swift just connected 11,000 banks to a settlement network that uses XRP as the bridge currency, here is exactly what your position could be worth. Before you dismiss this as just another headline, consider one number: $5 trillion. That is how much Swift moves every single day through the global banking system. Now that system is being connected to infrastructure that settles in 3 seconds flat using XRP. If you do not understand what this means for your stack, you could be holding one of the most undervalued positions in all of crypto and not even know it. By the end of this video, I will show you the exact math on what 5,000 XRP could be worth if this captures even 1% of Swift volume, and the number will change how you think about your entire bag. Drop your XRP bag size in the comments right now. I want to see the conviction levels in this community before I show you these numbers. Let me explain why this is different from every other Swift headline you have seen. Swift is not a bank, it is the messaging backbone that connects over 11,000 financial institutions across more than 200 countries. Every single time a bank sends money internationally, it goes through Swift. The problem is that Swift has been operating on the same basic infrastructure for decades. A cross-border payment through Swift takes 2 to 5 business days and passes through multiple intermediary banks. Each one of those banks takes a cut. The average international wire transfer costs between $25 and $50 in fees. And because the system requires pre-funded Nostro and Vostro accounts, banks have an estimated $27 trillion locked up globally just to keep this outdated system running. Think about that for a second. $27 trillion sitting in accounts around the world, doing absolutely nothing except waiting for a transaction to clear. That is dead capital generating zero return. That is the problem that XRP and Ripple are solving right now. And Swift knows it. That is why they are testing distributed ledger settlement. Here is what changed. Swift has been testing integration with distributed ledger technology, and the network they are connecting to settles in 3 to 4 seconds using XRP as the bridge currency. Not minutes, not hours, not days, 3 seconds. This is not speculation. This is Swift actively building infrastructure to replace the system that has held global finance hostage for 40 years. When you grasp the scale of what is happening here, the current XRP price becomes almost comically disconnected from the utility being built beneath it. Here is what this means for you. If you are holding 5,000 XRP right now, if even a fraction of that $27 trillion in locked up capital gets freed by faster settlement, the demand for XRP as the bridge asset could be unlike anything we have seen in crypto history. Now let me walk you through the actual math, because nobody else is showing you this in concrete numbers. Swift processes approximately $5 trillion per day. That is $5 trillion that needs to move from one bank to another across borders every single day. If XRP captures just 1% of that daily flow, we are talking about $50 billion per day settling through XRP. XRP does not need to hold that $50 billion in market cap. It settles in 3 to 4 seconds, which means the same XRP gets recycled thousands of times per day. But to handle $50 billion in daily throughput, the network needs deep liquidity pools. Market makers must hold significant XRP positions that create sustained demand pressure on a fixed supply of approximately 57 billion circulating tokens. Ask yourself this: what happens to the price of any asset when institutional demand increases by billions of dollars per day while the supply is mathematically capped and cannot increase? The answer is obvious when you think about it that way. Using a conservative monetary velocity model, here are 3 scenarios for what 5,000 XRP could be worth. In the conservative scenario, XRP captures 1% of Swift daily volume. That is $50 billion per day in throughput. Based on standard crypto monetary velocity ratios, this implies a required network value of approximately $1.7 trillion. Divide that by the circulating supply of 57 billion XRP, and you get a price of roughly $30 per token. At $30 per XRP, your 5,000 XRP position goes from approximately $10,000 today to $150,000. That is a 15 XRP return from where we are sitting right now. If this data surprised you, hit that like button right now, because the next two scenarios are even bigger. In the moderate scenario, XRP captures 3% of SWIFT volume. That is $150 billion per day. The implied network value jumps to approximately $5.4 trillion, XRP at roughly $95 per token. Your 5,000 XRP becomes $475,000. And in the bullish scenario at 5% SWIFT volume capture, $250 billion per day in throughput, the numbers get serious. Implied network value exceeds $8.7 trillion. XRP price per token approaches $150 to $160, and your 5,000 XRP position is worth approximately $800,000. That is not hopium. That is math applied to real infrastructure being built right now. $5 trillion a day, 11,000 banks, 3-second settlement. These are not speculative numbers pulled from thin air. If you need an exchange to trade XRP with no KYC and a $30,000 sign-up bonus, link is in the description. That is WEEX. But here is the part that makes this even more compelling, and it is something almost nobody is covering. The institutional confirmation signals are stacking up at a rate I have never seen before. There are now 7 US-listed spot XRP ETFs with combined assets under management between $1.4 and $1.6 billion. Goldman Sachs just disclosed $154 million in XRP-related holdings through their latest 13F filing. Franklin Templeton, one of the largest asset managers in the world, just updated their XRP position, and Ripple completed their $1.25 billion acquisition of Hidden Road, a prime brokerage that handles over $3 trillion in annual volume annually. What does all of this tell you? Institutions are not waiting for retail to figure this out. They are positioning right now while XRP sits at roughly $2 per token. Some of the largest financial institutions on the planet are building infrastructure around XRP settlement. That is not a coincidence. That is a signal. Now think about the timing. SWIFT connecting 11,000 banks to XRP-compatible infrastructure is happening alongside the Clarity Act, which is expected to reach a Senate vote this quarter. If the Clarity Act passes and XRP officially gets classified as a commodity, it opens the floodgates for even more institutional capital. We are talking about pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, and major asset managers that are currently sitting on the sidelines because regulatory clarity does not exist yet. When it does, the capital flows that follow could be historic. Do you think XRP hits $30 before the end of 2026? Comment yes or no below. I want to see where this community actually stands right now. Here is another layer almost nobody is covering. Ripple is ISO 2022 compliant. For those who do not know, ISO 2022 is the new global messaging standard that every bank in the world is actively migrating to. It is the direct replacement for the old SWIFT messaging format that has been in use for decades. XRP was built from the ground up to be fully compatible with this new standard. That is not an accident. When you combine ISO 2022 compliance with 3-second settlement and near zero transaction fees, you have a bridge currency that does everything SWIFT has been trying to do for decades, but faster, cheaper, and more efficiently. Here is what this means for you specifically. The banks connecting to this network are not doing it to pump XRP price. They are doing it because it saves them enormous amounts of money. If XRP-based settlement frees even 10% of that $27 trillion locked in Nostro and Vostro accounts, banks collectively save $2.7 trillion. That is the kind of cost savings that makes adoption inevitable, not because banks love crypto, but because the math absolutely demands it. And this is where I want to address something important for the long-term holders in this community. XRP has been frustrating to hold in 26. The price has dropped roughly 40% since January, despite an endless stream of bullish institutional catalysts. Deutsche Bank integration, MasterCard partnership, 7 ETFs live, Goldman Sachs holdings disclosed, and yet the price has gone down. I know how that feels. It is maddening. But here is the framework that makes it make sense. Markets do not price in infrastructure. They price in speculation, sentiment, and momentum. The infrastructure being built right now is creating the foundation for the next massive repricing event. When SWIFT fully activates XRP settlement across 11,000 banks and that transaction volume starts flowing through the network daily, the price does not move gradually. It moves in one violent correction upward because the gap between XRP utility value and its current market price has never been wider than it is right now. Subscribe and hit the notification bell because the next 60 days could be the most important in XRP entire history. The catalysts converging right now are unlike anything we have seen since the beginning of this asset class. Now let me bring this home to your 5,000 XRP position. At the current price of approximately $2, your position is worth about $10,000. In the conservative scenario where XRP captures 1% of SWIFT volume, your 5,000 XRP is worth $150,000. That is a 15x return. In the moderate scenario at 3% capture, you are looking at $475,000. And in the bullish scenario at 5% capture, your 5,000 XRP position crosses $800,000. Remember what I told you at the beginning of this video. I said the math would change how you think about your bag. Now you see why. The question is not whether XRP will be used for global settlement. The infrastructure is already being built. The question is what percentage of that $5 trillion daily volume it ultimately captures. And even the most conservative scenario puts your 5,000 XRP at a value most people would consider genuinely life-changing. One concrete action item before I go. If you believe in this thesis, consider dollar cost averaging into your position while XRP is still trading under $5. Because once the volume starts flowing through the SWIFT network and the market catches up to the infrastructure reality, you do not get another chance to buy at these prices. This is not financial advice. This is what the data is showing me. If you found value in this breakdown, hit subscribe and turn on the bell. I have a video dropping tomorrow covering the second catalyst converging on XRP right now that could be even bigger than SWIFT. I will see you in that one.